Hello friends, so good to be with you again, and today I've got just a random selection of odds and sods that we find often clutter up our stash. So I have here some, let me show you these ones first. When I've been working with napkins and I've sometimes got part of a napkin left over, I tend to just separate the various plies, the different layers, and I stick them down on some book pages for later use. So it might be the top image, which would be the one that has the brightest color, but then sometimes, and I think this is the one I'm looking for, sometimes I might have had an image like the strawberry and then the second ply still has a bit of color. So I use those because those are quite nice and building up a collage background, just to add a bit of interest to a book page, because sometimes you just get too much book page and this kind of just softens it a little bit. And then this would have been a third ply where there's very little color left, but you can see it just adds almost like a opacity or a little veiled color to the book page. And then sometimes just the edges of napkins, they might have a nice border like that. I stick those down and a couple of little images. So we're going to play with those because those are random things that I've got. I have been doing other pieces of collage and I've got some random little bits. I know, we're insane, we keep them because we might use them. And then I have some different garden themed wrapping papers which I'm using. This one has a white background and this one has a very yellow cream background, but it did have most of the images on some handmade paper. So I've separated those. I wouldn't normally take two different kinds of wrapping papers like this, but the unifying factor here is that they're both painted with watercolors, so the feel is the same, and I think when you see what I'm going to do, you'll understand how they're going to link together. Found this little bit of lace. Don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I think it might be useful. I've got a couple of stamps here, and I'm going to be using glue sticks mainly to glue my things down, so just a normal regular glue stick. I've got an ink pad, and then also I've got a couple of little Indian woodblock stamps which have almost leaf-like patterns. And then this one is a button that I stuck onto a wine cork, and I just love it. It's not flat, so it doesn't print the whole image out, but if you roll it around you get interesting marks. I also have here one of these lovely berry tea bags, and I just love the color of this. I think this is going to tie in nicely. And then I have a packet from some soap that I had, and again it's got a watercolor feel, and I'm going to be working with garden things, so it's got leaves and it's got fruit. I'm probably going to use some of that. Then also, if I've been painting something, then I will tend to just take a piece of paper and clean my brush with that, so I will just dilute the paint a little bit and make some marks. This one I was actually painting around an outside of an image, so I've got a whole lot of different colors there. Book pages are great for cleaning off your brushes, just messing around with different things, and you'll find that these really just add interest to what you're doing. So don't be quite as crazy as I am and collect everything, but just keep some in your stash. Then I have some nice jute twine, and I've thinned this out because I just feel that the twine on its own, which is this kind of thickness, might be too thick for what I'm doing, so I might use that. It just fits in. Now here's the insanity of this. I have one of these till rolls, and a while ago I just found, I had a lot of till slips from the various stores I'd been to, so I started tearing them up and sticking them down just to actually create a background. So that is my base that I'm going to be working on, is this till roll, and it's going to just make a snippet roll, and we will play with this and make it into things at a later stage. So I just need to put something on here with a bit of weight. Let me use that glue stick. The first thing I'm going to do is to take my little ink pad here, and I'm just going to do a little bit of inking over these till slips, and what you'll see immediately is that these look pretty separated at this stage, but once I start doing the inking it kind of joins the images together. Stay. Right, so I'm not doing them in any particular way, and I'm also not trying to get a really crisp image. I'd like them to be slightly faded. And let me just work with a section at this stage, and then I'm going to take my little button, just ink this up, and as I say, it's not going to print as a whole image, but it does add quite nice marks, and I'll lift this up and show it to you in a second. But already you can see that this, instead of it being individual till slips, it's starting to look more like a uniform piece of paper. Designers often use this technique when they're doing graphic design and things like that. And if you've ever done painting at home, you'll know that the color that you put on top is always the most dominant. So we're just creating backgrounds at the moment. Right, and then I have one more thing that I didn't show you earlier, was that I had cut out a stencil, and I'm just going to use this because it's got this lattice pattern. I thought it would be quite nice just to break up some of the larger surfaces. So again, I'm not looking for a really hard image. I'm just going to go into this lightly and just create a few little marks here and there just for interest. Yeah, I think that'll be enough because it's actually quite a bold image on its own. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at some of my backgrounds that I've done. I quite like this gold edging from this particular napkin, so I'm going to tear out some of this and use some of this in my design. I'm probably also going to use some of this just book page with a bit of color on, because it actually is not quite as book pagey for want of a better description. It's got another layer to it, and I like to tear my pages because it gives nice soft edges. When you cut a piece of paper, it gives you quite a strong hard line, and I think for the work that I'm doing now, it's not actually going to blend together so nicely. So let's just have some of that at the ready, and I think I'm going to just have something with a bit of color. Maybe let's just take some of these look rather nice, and I won't use that as a whole image here, it's too strong. I just want pops of color. So the first thing we're going to do is just to start by tearing up some of the book page and sticking that down and breaking up the pieces so that they're not too overwhelming. There we go. And quite a lot of my till slips I've put this way around just because of the nature of the till roll that I'm working on. So I'm going to try and break those lines up by layering these pieces of napkin and book page at different angles so that it doesn't become too hard. I'm not going to cover the whole image, I'm just going to do part of it. How's your week been? We've just had absolutely glorious weather here at the moment. Really, really lovely. I think yesterday was about, well, probably about 27 degrees, and considering it's only spring here, it was amazing. I'm really blessed to work outside in a horticultural field, and I train people, and yeah, we had a lovely day. In fact, I've got one lady who's quite shy, and we had an absolute breakthrough with her in the last few days where she started to participate verbally in a lot of the things that we're doing. So that's been a great joy, just to have her engage a little bit more. But the beauty is, of course, when you out there, you just have this incredible view. All the apple blossoms are out at the moment, and they're absolutely spectacular. So I've taken a couple of pics of those to be able to paint them, because I do like to paint in watercolors myself. Let me tear this one a little bit smaller, and don't be afraid of tearing things smaller if need be, because when you're working on something as narrow as a snippet roll, you really don't want to have huge chunks of stuff all over the place. I think that's enough of this for now. So I think what I'll progress to now is maybe putting on a few pops of bright orange color, which will be nice. So again, I'm just tearing around the edges, and we'll just do a little bit here. So I'm not going to lay this down and try and make it look like a fruit. I'm literally going to do that kind of thing and have a pop of color. I think on this size that I'm working, it's just going to be too much. Let's put this over here. Anyway, so the apple blossoms are all out at the moment, and all the currants are bearing fruit. The trees are absolutely spectacular with all their blossoms, and we just seem to have rolled from one splash of color into the next, We had all the daffodils, and then we had, sorry, all the trees coming out in blossom, and they're still going. Lots of other little daisy things popping out in the garden. So it's just a real joy. People say, how do you work there in winter? Well, you just dress up warmly. So winter's a different story. We work outside even if it's 1 degree and 2 degrees. I think this last winter we only worked inside on one day when it was snowing. So yeah, we just dress up. Anyway, here's another bit of napkin that's got a few bits of napkin design on the book page, and I'm going to use this just as an intermediate color between the gold and the other one that I've laid down. Now, quite often when you have bought a roll of perhaps gift wrap and you have seen images there that you like and you want to be able to use them for your mixed media and junk journals, the edges have half images, and this kind of snippet roll is a fantastic way to be able to use those up. So I've got these two sort of half wheelbarrows here, which are quite fancy, but they wouldn't really work if I was going to need the whole image, and it's almost a waste to throw them away. So if I tear this out quite carefully, I think I'm going to be able to line this along the side, and it's not going to make any difference. It's just going to look as though I've just chopped through it as I've been preparing a project, and you can use all of these bits and bobs up. Right, so you'll see what I'm going to do now is to layer some of these images up onto the sides. I have another one here with a part of a gardening apron that I've already torn out. And I'm not going to work on the whole roll today. I just want to give you an idea of what I'm doing so that you can go ahead and play, because my roll here is several meters long, so it would be here a really long time. So out of my colored book pages, I had one here that had some nice greeny colors. This is where I just dyed them with paint. So I'm now going to come in with a bit of this. Not too much, because I'm not working, as I say, on this very large area. Let's put some up here. And then I have some strips of white that just have a line through it, but the line is also green. So I'm going to include that just to break up some of these solid areas. And you've just got to allow your eye to be the judge of where you're going to place these images. I'll put glue on this long one, but I think in reality it's a bit long, so let me break this up again and maybe do this one as a smaller spot over here. Now I have my garden letters, and I say the garden letters, just these individual stamps, and I think I'm just going to do a couple of these. Again, I'm just inking them up really, really lightly so that they're not too overwhelming. Let's do an N. And you can go off the page, that's also okay, so no rules really. I think I might also just come back in with a bit of leaf just to soften up the images that I have already laid down, like that. Maybe a bit more with the button, because the button has a slightly darker mark. So these layers just push what you've already put on further into the background, so the first ones will become almost next to nothing by the time we're finished. So I have this lovely stained tea bag here, and I'm going to just tear it open. I have already removed most of the tea leaves from there. I actually don't like this particular tea very much, but I do love the color of the tea bag, so I use it for dyeing fabric and also for dyeing papers much more than I do drink it. But anyway, maybe it's just the particular brand I don't like, but the color of the tea bags is just glorious. Right, so let's add a little bit more color in here, and you'll see just by introducing this extra color it's making it a slightly richer design. Yeah, Yeah, so one of the things that we've been growing in our polytunnels at the moment is loads and loads of sunflowers and sweet peas. And because the public come to the farm quite a lot in summer, we're going to make an arch of the sweet peas so people can walk through this fragrant arch. And I just think that that's going to be a lovely experience for most people. So I'm very excited about that. I'm going to dive into this wrapping from my soap and just tear off a little bit here. This again has got nice soft colors because it's watercolors, and it's got this sort of pinky tone here, and it's got greens as well. So although the wrapping isn't new and it's not a complete sheet, I'm going to just add this for color and for the interest. So let's pop that one there. And a little bit on the other side. Now I always try and create a little bit of balance. If necessary, you can just let it hang over the edge. It's not serious, or you could do that and tuck it in. Now, in one of my wrapping papers, I had some of these lovely bigger why can't I talk now? Lovely bigger images. So I think I'm going to stick this one down just to start to fill up some more of the background space. And then we'll work over this one as well. So images don't always have to go the same way. And you'll see immediately now that I'm hiding some of the things underneath. It's not too serious if this happens. There we go. That's a nice little pot brush. Let's put that over there. And some gardening gloves. So the gardening gloves image has got quite a hard edge, so I think I'm going to place that on the edge of my till roll where it's already cut, so it looks as though it has been cut. Then in my second range of gardening papers, I've got this little bird house, which I really love birds, love them to bits. Been making lots of surf balls for them during the winter. Yeah, so let's put that one here. And then I also have, I think that one might be a bit big. Oh, here's a little row of pots. This one's rather nice, but I don't think I'm going to use it as a whole row. So I think I'll just split this up into individual pots. That one being cut off and popping on the edge. Right, so let's put this little one further along here. So you can see nicely that this is starting to fill up, but the images on the top still look very plain and disjointed, so I'm coming back in with my inking. And I'm just going to work a little bit over the surfaces of these new images that I've put down. And when you are selecting stamps to do this technique with, try and find something that obviously ties in a little bit with the theme that you're working on. So, I mean, don't go and get soccer ball stamps and things. I'm sure that's an obvious choice, but sometimes we do things without thinking. Right, so you can see there that just that light bit of stamping over there has kind of blended a lot of the things together. And I'm coming back in with one of my leaf stamps just to add a bit more of that. And one has to be discerning not to cover all the white areas, and also not to make everything too busy so that you lose the background completely. Right, so let's do that, and I think one more layer. So I'm going to start including at this stage some things like this little bit of lace. I really like the lace. Lace is tricky to stick down. You could either use gel medium, that works nicely and it doesn't stain it, but I'm just, for this purpose today, just going to use the glue stick and stick this down. And I think I'm going to put it over here. No, let me put it over here. Just pat that down. That will be sticky for a little while, and then you've just got to be patient and let that dry. I wouldn't stamp over that because it's going to make your stamp sticky as well. Then I have these lovely twines that I had before, and I'm going to include some of those, but I think I might just use a bit more of the tea bag. In fact, let me use some of this because this is slightly softer on the reverse side, just to bring in a bit more of this pinky color. I do love this color, I must say. It's so rich. The nice thing about the tea bags is because the image is on such fine paper that you do get a little sort of veiled look. It's almost like looking through a bit of vellum. So you can soften some of your images just by using one of these tea bags. If you use regular tea, you might find that the images are too dark, but these sort of herbal teas give you softer colors, so they work really well. And just for good measure, I'm going to tear this into two. I think I'll pop some on either end. Let me do a bit over here. I am starting to get rather sticky, but that's okay. Nearly there. Right, so let's put a little bit of that orange in the glove. Great. And then I just wonder whether I should add more at this stage or not. I think I'm going to come back in with some of my letter stamps. Do a couple of stronger impressions here. And then I'm going to use one of these large images, like a weekly planner. Maybe I'll do that over here. Obviously, if you have images that you're particularly fond of, then hold those back and put them on last, because as you can see now that some of the images that I have already applied will be covered. So don't be precious about something and then go and cover it all up as I'm doing now. Right, so the last bit of stamping now is coming in. I'm going to do a little bit of this over the weekly planner just to blend that into the background. And my little button, which I do love. And then the last thing I'm going to do is just to stick down a little bit of this twine, because I just think that will give it a nice texture. But this is going to be difficult to apply glue to the twine, so I'm just going to simply do a stripe onto my snippet roll that I'm making, and I'm going to pat that down, and I might do some this side as well. And then these snippet rolls are lovely because you can chop them up and glue them onto a tag. You could do corners for your junk journals. You could make them into little pockets. I'm really sticky now. So they give you endless possibilities. It's a bit like doing a masterboard or a collage board. You're doing it with no particular purpose in mind, but you have the use of chopping it up at a later stage. If when the glue is dry on this twine, I find that I actually need to glue some ends down, then I'll just come back and do that later. Right, so now that I'm thoroughly sticky and I've more or less completed that, I'll just give you a closer look so you can see all the things that I've done, and you'll see how the stamps have tied everything together. I might just go in over that birdhouse a little bit more, I think, just to tie that roof in and make it a bit softer. Let's see how that does. Okay, so one more, go through that, and of course because the roll just goes on forever, as I said to you, I did a couple of meters of this. I can continue playing with this until I'm finished, or until I want to change the theme of it. So thank you for joining me today. Please consider subscribing to my channel, and if you've enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. Bye for now.